Thank you. I will call to order the Grandview Heights Finance Committee meeting of Monday, November 24th. Chair Smith just phoned me very recently and asked for us to get started. Without him, we expect him in short order. At his request, I will go ahead and share. Council Member Houston and I are present, as are Kozak, Mayor Kearns, City Attorney Adam Maxwell, Finance, and all department heads. At his request, presumably so that he can be here for the bulk of our conversation, he asked for us to advance the agenda item number 3 to first in our meeting. Any objections?
You said agenda item 3 we're going to go to first?
Yeah.
Okay.
The collective bargaining.
Okay.
Salary ordinance amendment.
Yes. Councilmember Walker has arrived as well, for the record. Thank you. Megan, I'll defer to you to open up. We have been briefed about this in a prior executive committee meeting and received a piece of correspondence from Director Maxwell, I believe.
Actually, this one is on the non-union salary
I'm sorry.
ordinance. It's
Well,
making.
that's why I'm not chairing the meeting, see? No. Go ahead.
We made a couple changes that Director Maxwell can talk about that are kind of go hand in hand with the
Yeah,
budget.
very well. Go ahead.
Items that we budgeted.
Yes, so there are a few positions that we are proposing as part of the budget, and you'll see that in the Finance Committee report. And so that this runs in alignment with the budget, we've included these titles. If council, for whatever reason, decides that they would not like to fund them, then we can drop them out by third reading. But the new position titles include changing Assistant Director of Service to Deputy Director of Service / Engineering Manager, adding a Code Enforcement Technician 1 position, a Crime Analyst position, and those are the changes that we've proposed for you. And then there is another position that's represented by a collective bargaining agreement that's not listed here, but that is in the budget, would be an Assistant Fire Marshal, and we'll hear more about that during the budget presentation.
Thank you. Mayor Kearns, would you like to address us on any details regarding those added positions?
Deputy Director of Service, we basically all of our, at least all of our large public service oriented departments have a backup, an assistant or deputy director. This one does not. We are planning for the future as well. We do need a bench there though with the workload. We also, as you know, contract out in city engineer services to EP Ferris. We do not have an engineer or somebody with a depth of engineering experience or knowledge within the organization. We think it would be beneficial. Among those services would be kind of the project management function. It has been our experience that residents don't respond to the Ferris project manager as they would to a project manager with the city. We recognize that would be helpful to have someone in-house, and I will let the director or the service director or anybody else on the staff who wants to speak on this as well.
I would just add, too, that I think it would be paramount. Part of the reason for this position request is the communication on large capital projects would be handled by this person. They would be able to kind of do some of the translation and interpretation from the Ferris team, who does a nice job representing us as an engineer, but then communicating that to the public. The First Avenue project's an example where I think we could improve. We've learned from when we can improve on the communication effort to the residents. So this position, in addition to supporting Daryl and providing some succession opportunity, would really be providing frontline communication to residents on projects.
One of the things that you just mentioned is sort of within the aura of question that I have. Is there enough workload for a full-time position to be warranted?
I think there is, and there's really not a lot of depth of supervision in the service department. We've got a couple of leads that they lead their staffs. They're not true supervisors. A lot of the reporting goes all the way up to the director without intermediary supervision, which is unusual for a department of that size. So this position could help manage a lot of the day-to-days as well and free up Daryl's time for leadership.
Director Hughes, for the benefit of all of us, can you briefly describe the structure that you're presently operating in to support Adam's statement? Thank you.
Yes, currently within the department, only other people we have a project coordinator, which is Marcus. He helps out working with gas company, those type of projects that come into town. He also takes care of a lot of our fleet maintenance, equipment, those type of things. But he's not really a supervisor over the guys out in the service department. So we have a couple lead guys, and they report. It comes all the way through me, but they report back to me on. So I'm really involved quite a bit with the daily work within the maintenance department or maintenance staff.
So your crew leads are not necessarily supervisory from a reporting perspective. They're just an organizational kind of
Yeah, I mean, it's,
within the crew.
yes,
They're
yeah.
the lead for the crew. They don't have any reporting obligations to you directly. Is that kind
No,
of?
yeah, they report to me directly. They help out with evaluations on those guys within those crews. But they aren't,
But they're not a backup for you.
they're definitely not a backup for me, no,
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah,
And
no.
that person or personnel doesn't exist presently.
not at all, no.
Melanie?
Yeah, thank you, that's helpful. I presume you might want someone with an engineering degree, from what I've heard you say, and it's an
Yes.
engineering manager. Do we,
We've talked about it. I mean, a professional engineer would be ideal, but I don't know that we could find someone who could potentially be the service director and an engineer. So we would look for someone with some engineering experience, maybe as an engineering technician or support person. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a PE, professional engineer.
gotcha, okay, that's what I was curious about, because the salary range, I was wondering if it could command a professional engineer, so.
It probably needs to be at least recognized that often those engineers aren't the best person to interface with the public either. Character-wise, there's usually a kind of a personality difference between those that deal front-facing and those that actually
Yeah.
do the mathematics or, the true engineering behind it. It's been my experience anyway.
Not always,
So-
but yeah. I
No,
hear
not
what you're
always.
saying.
I was delicate with my wording.
I have two engineers in my family, and they have quite personalities, but I get it.
Yeah.
Not everyone can.
Yeah, like I said, it's worth mentioning. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank
Much
you,
appreciated. Mayor, any further guidance or comments on the code enforcement technician?
Sure. We have, this isn't a new position per se, it's something within our staffing, but basically the way we have it structured, as you know, over the last 15 years, there's been a lot of need for building services, building inspections. And that's really the function that we focused on. And now that Grandview Yard is nearly built out and the intensity of that is not so great, and that we are also really haven't been paying enough attention to code enforcement. We really have evaluated this actually even before Adam got here, and have been moving towards a code enforcement officer, kind of to the qualifications there. That is a certain type of person that has a different set of qualifications and skills than a building inspector per se. We like to cross-train people, but there is a need for this function.
Does that also carry the sort of deputy possibility or?
No. I would say no.
Implication, okay.
No, the CBO, the chief building official, we have a backup person right now. It's Director Hughes for that building official function. This is different. And as you know, Director Hughes has certainly some experience with code enforcement and has helped us out during a long period of vacancy there with really, as I said, the planning for this has been going on for some time.
And it's a much smaller department. There's only a few individuals in this department as opposed to the service department.
So this is a new position, this and the crime analyst?
This one actually isn't. This position, it was funded in this year's budget, was not filled. So we're changing the title and then just letting council know that we intend to fill this position for next year and deal with some of those property maintenance items that have come up of late, including one that we've talked about recently with front yard maintenance and things like that. So this person would be frontlining, communicating that to the public and navigating those waters. So position exists, not filled this year. We intend to fill it and use the title, or change it to this title.
Melanie, did you ask about crime enforcement?
Well,
Or
there was one,
Crime
no,
analyst, I
there's,
mean? Sorry.
well, we can get to that one.
No,
You're
I thought
planning to
that's
get
what you
to
said.
crime
That's why I was
analyst.
asking.
I did, I was
Okay.
thinking I grouped them together.
Oh,
asking
okay, okay.
Both of them were new, and I failed to see the stricken
Let's-
text below.
No
that-
worries,
that
I
it's
just
not
wanted to
new, it's
make
just
sure.
retitled. Can I ask one follow-up question?
course.
Will there be a other set of things, I mean, it won't be only yard-based enforcement?
No, it could be a number of property maintenance items, issues with the home.
Garage.
Yeah, things like that, yeah.
Conditions and,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, of course.
And is this, we had this position previously, and they were doing code enforcement, and that position was eliminated at some point?
I'll say it wasn't eliminated. We had two positions. We had people, at least in my time, we've had people cross-trained to do both, but it really doesn't work that well because the rhythm of it, the qualifications are somewhat different. The types of people that, maybe want to work in building code enforcement have those qualifications aren't necessarily, that's their focus, and it's hard to balance those duties. And so I think we've concluded to, separate them into one and one instead of two that are cross-trained that are really more oriented towards building code, which is what we've had since I've been here.
Also, you might recall about 7 years ago, we had Ron Ayers that worked here. He retired 7 years ago. He did code enforcement. That was his job, and that was right as Grandview Yard was coming on. So we had building inspectors then after he retired, and now we're kind of going back to pick up that code enforcement piece. So the city has had a code enforcement property maintenance person in the past.
But then for the last 7 years, nobody spent, because I know that we did receive from him a letter about some forsythia that was growing into the alley, and I would just ask, it wasn't the most pleasant, like the way it was presented with highlighting and exclamation points, it was sort of an angry communication towards residents. So I guess I worry about the communication, the method of communication towards the resident, and also that we haven't done that for 7 years, that to suddenly have this new role and then people will be surprised that they're getting citations when nothing's happened for the last 7 years.
I think we recognize that. We recognize a lot of public education will need to occur. It's not pleasant sometimes. It's not that we haven't been doing enforcement, we have, but it has not been at the intensity of that what we would be able to do, or really the level. And I think basically with somewhat new director want to start fresh with a program defining what the priorities are too, and that will come. And I don't know if the director has anything to add. We haven't actually asked you to speak on this.
But
Please.
the public education piece would be key before we launched any large-scale enforcement effort.
Yeah, the problem with building inspectors are certified by the state and are very specialized in buildings and not at all specialized in property maintenance codes. We're looking at considering adopting a more update property maintenance code, so we are more in current with things that are happening now. And there is actually training for people like that. There's a certification you can get that makes you a property maintenance person who understands the codes and knows how to work the codes that we haven't had before. So that would allow us to be more proactive now. We strictly work on a complaint basis, and we would be able to we'd also not only be able to deal with more violations, but deal with more with the public of how to not end up with violations. And education would be part of it. So we're not going to dive in and have citations for everybody just because we've done it for 7 years. We need to start what's important and get people educated. We'll do a lot of communication things to make people aware of what's happening so they begin to understand what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council regarding those two positions? All right, let's move on to the next crime analyst, mayor or chief.
Just broadly speaking, we have a detective sergeant plus 2 detectives who do investigations. it's a data intensive world at this point in history, and that has dramatically increased over the last 20 years. And this would be a civilian position who's someone who can be trained, who isn't, who's maybe kind of early career type experience level, who can be trained and learn to be a specialist in data analysis, so that the detectives can better utilize their time and be able to delegate.
Yeah, that is correct. So this is a common position between law enforcement agencies pretty much through the region and all across the country. Often we find ourselves communicating with those crime analysts ourselves, myself included. We'll receive their reports from other agencies. It's very data-driven, a lot of statistics, a lot of algorithms, a lot of reports that are created, a lot of predictive crime analysis come in from other agencies, and we're looking to kind of jump on that to help our detectives alleviate some of the pressures and time consumption that they have conducting their normal investigations, but also, as Mayor indicated, we're looking for somebody who may be early in their career, but also has experience with some of the specialized training that we're looking for, including mapping tools, open source data, social networking analysis, a lot of statistics. This individual would gather crime-related data from reports, logs, arrests, other databases, analyze trends, patterns, and serious criminal activity through the area. They would work closely with the other analysts and intelligence individuals from other agencies to help predictive measures here in Grandview Heights and Marble Cliff. They would develop those models and aid us in resource development and strategic deployment of our resources here. They would support our investigations and help with forensic analysis, review of evidence. They would also help us as kind of a part-time property custodian and helping with our evidence room and management thereof, because right now our detective sergeant and one of our detectives manage our property room, which pulls them away from their normal duties of investigations. So that would greatly assist there, as well as being a liaison with the prosecutor's office, preparing those reports, grand jury packets, and investigations for prosecution. Ensuring a proper closing of investigations, properly updating criminal charges, and obviously we would look to have these individuals trained with the specialized tools and training necessary to be successful at the position, just like every other agency in the region has. And there's multiple agencies that have this position. Just to kind of go into that, Columbus Police obviously has numerous individuals that are crime analysts or criminal intelligence. Dublin Police, Franklin County Sheriff's Office, Gahanna, Hilliard, the Ohio State University, Reynoldsburg Police, Upper Arlington Police, Westville Police, and Whitehall Police are just a few. So it is a very common position, and we would look to employ somebody with the same credentials and qualifications.
Any questions from committee members? Go ahead,
I'll
please.
ask a couple. This makes sense, sounds reasonable. So this person would have a criminology type degree?
Something in criminal justice field,
Criminal
correct? Yeah,
justice.
criminology, criminal justice, very statistical and analyzation type skills.
But would
analytical.
not be uniform, would not be a uniform police member.
Not a
right?
sworn
It would be
member
a
of our
desk.
division. This would be a civilian position that we would maintain on staff.
Okay. We've gotten into this at all, I might have missed it. Are we using AI? My brain went to AI when we were talking about the data analysis, and I don't know if we, as a city or a department, have created a policy around AI usage, or just if we're using it right now in our.
No, I mean, we may use publicly available AI tools just like you can do at home, but we don't have any specialized trained members right now to really dive into that. And there are agencies going towards that. I'm kind of skeptical about it right now because some of it's not proven, and I want to make sure that we're doing the best practices basically in our field and how we bring cases to a conclusion. So that would be something that we would look at having somebody trained in to make sure that not only if they're going to do it, or if we permit it, that it's the best practice out there with other agencies, but also that it is a verified form, basically to get the truth instead of just assuming or using something that is kind of a guess or an estimate.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you.
On that topic, I would ask the chief to describe our partnerships. If we should have something that's, I guess, beyond our capacity, whether it's speed or amount of data or complexity, can you describe who our partners are and how we would proceed with a large data set that we maybe couldn't fully process in-house?
Sure. So right now, our immediate partners would be with the BCI, out in London. We also utilize the Franklin County ICAC Task Force, Internet Crimes Against Children. They have a large forensics unit there that we're obviously parts of. We have a member on that task force. They help us out frequently. But we can also use the Ohio State Highway Patrol Criminal Laboratory and the Columbus Police Crime Laboratory. The problem with using any of those is time consumption. It can take weeks to analyze forensics data, especially when you come into the current trend of technology and it's ever expanding and methods and techniques are changing daily. So to stay current with the training and the ability of our own staff, we have to stay in constant communication and stay up to date with those trends and the changes that we all see day in and day out with our technology. And this would be somebody who we would, allow to keep that training and stay up to date for us and be able to help us come to good conclusions on cases and not have to farm out our evidence and investigations.
To the extent that, for everyone's benefit, I think I'm trying to separate the analyst portion from the actual lab technical work portion. If I heard you correctly, this would be useful in a liaison situation such that they can focus on those relationships and the intermingling between these various agencies to basically gather the quickest response and stay on it, rather than someone who might be a sworn officer who has other duties or responsibilities of oversight or street work to complete for their assignment.
That is correct. They would assist our sworn personnel greatly in terms of analyzing and preparing those reports and statistical data, not only in a current or present situation, but also predictive measures in the future. Deploy your resources here. Maybe there's a large number of robberies going on in one area of Columbus, and it's starting to trickle down towards us. They can take those dates and times of those reports, any suspect descriptions, and create a predictive model and give that to us and say, we have these similar types of businesses in this area. We notice that these crimes are always happening on Tuesdays or Thursdays between these hours, and then we can reallocate our resources at that point in time. I don't want you to get confused when I say lab work. It's not processing DNA. It's not doing fingerprints or anything like that. Lab work can be anything from forensics. It can be processing documents in terms of going through it for certain clues, certain things that are frequent in a case file that are just repetitive. They would assist us with forensics. So specifically related to technology. And when we, for instance, if we did a search warrant on a phone, the amount of data that comes back on a phone today is enormous. With we call it a phone dump, basically. All of the information that comes back from your phone. It could have 20 to 50 different applications, maybe even more. Well, every one of those applications may contain an enormous amount of data within that. So that results in additional search warrants or additional subpoenas, additional legal processes. So this person would take all of that data, combine it, find what's linked within, and they could do one of the web analogies, basically, of, well, this person's connected to these 10 different people over here, and we know this person's connected to these crimes over here, and this person's connected to this area over here. It can take all that, map it together, and provide the statistics and the analytical that we need from it. So it's very, very technology-driven, high intelligence-driven, high open source-driven, from the material that everybody has access to, deep dive into social media, and gaining clues from that as well.
Any other questions from council?
I have a more broad question.
Sure.
Connects to this position. So this is a new position, which adds headcount. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Does this
Well,
impact, well, I'm thinking for the whole, all of our salary beyond the police department. So I don't know, this might be more question for the mayor. Does it impact our ability, or finance director, to hire? I know I read from the budget book, we're not hiring right now, we're waiting to assess, but director of planning and community development down the road, will it impact our ability to hire that position?
I actually will ask the Director of Administration to maybe more in depth speak to that, because he did an organizational analysis. I would say the bottom line is the planning and community development function, I would say, is kind of driven by what we're doing at the time. And we've been very intense in the last few years. And we are covering some aspects of that function with a contractor, Planning Next, who we worked with on the First and Grandview project. But I would ask the director if there's anything to shed light on that.
Yeah, so as part of my analysis, with the project wrapping up at City Hall and opening and doing the dedication last week, and as the mayor alluded to, there's a lot of development that has occurred and a lot of planning, but I don't see that on the immediate horizon, and so recommended that this position not be filled next year, but rather that the positions that we're discussing with you are of a higher priority.
Okay.
And that was after spending my first 6 months getting to learn the organization, spending time talking with each director, bringing my own experiences. And so we're keeping the title in the salary ordinance, but recommending we don't fill it for next year.
Also, to actually, I forgot to mention, we have a planner on staff.
We do.
Who is Alex Smith, who's very skilled, yeah.
And she recently received her certification through the AICP, American Planning Association certification. And so we have that expertise on
Great.
staff too.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate that. Good insight. Any other questions regarding this agenda item? I'll entertain, is this, what reading am I on, Chris?
2.
2? Wonderful. Let's move on. I didn't realize that I would be chairing this. Not that it's challenging, I just,
Right, just didn't get a chance to prepare for it.
There is one other position. It's not in the salary ordinance, so that's why it's not readily apparent, but the assistant fire marshal position. And since we have department heads here tonight, it's probably best to address it this evening. And that's, so it doesn't show up on the salary ordinance because it's in the collective bargaining unit. And I just thought if we're just addressing personnel as we are right now, it's probably best while we have Chief Eisenacher here, if you have questions.
no objection. Yeah, let's proceed. Chief?
Yeah, this is something that we have had in the past, which is, I think we're going to call it the deputy fire marshal. When I started, we had a fire marshal and a deputy fire marshal. They were responsible for every fire prevention activity. They, at that time, absorbed a lot of the educational aspect, too. Since then, we've got a couple large projects going on. We've got the Park Line building going up in Grandview Yard. Summit Chase has had some major rehabs and refits going on. And over the last year or so, I've been kind of auditing our inspection records, and I noticed we were several hundred of our annual inspections down that weren't happening. And when I looked into it, any of our high life safety occupancies, like the schools and hotels, we want to be in there twice a year. That's the benchmark that we've been able to maintain. But to do that with just one body, which is Chris Everard right now, our fire marshal. We lost our deputy fire marshal when, at the time, Captain Martin Hafey stepped away to walk away from the fire service for another job. And at that time, we had to kind of prioritize. Do we want to refill that deputy position, or did we want to develop the assistant fire chief? Which on a larger scale, I think we went about it the right way, getting that succession plan down. So we kind of pushed the deputy fire marshal off to take care of the bigger items and the bigger holes within the fire division. So now we're back up. When I took over, we were able to create the new fire marshal position and kind of raise the salary a little bit, because at that time, Chris Everard was looking to go somewhere else. And his talent that he had in his knowledge of the community. He was brought up, 17 years ago with Chief Shaner at the time. He knew the community. So we decided to prioritize him and build the Fire Prevention Bureau around him, which has been a complete success. So he's just one person. He just can't keep up. He can't keep up with the daily meetings in Grandview Yard with Parkline. Summit Chase just replaced their fire pump. That has dominated his last 2 weeks. The new building, all the remodeling going on in Grandview right now. You guys, sometimes I think it's harder when we take a change of occupancy and remodel it than new construction. So Chris is trying to keep up with all that. So what's missing in the meantime? The annual inspections of our smaller businesses that are just as much of a fire risk as some of our larger occupancies. And we haven't had a chance to get in those on an annual basis like we want to. Some of the examples that I've pulled, we're trying to come up with legislation and update our code enforcement on our electrical vehicle charging stations. That's hugely important right now. So when Chris is working on that, he's not able to go do the 5 or 6 annual inspections that are scheduled for that day. For every business we have in the city to touch each and every one of those and walk through, he would have to do 5 or 6 of those a day. Our pre-plans, we like to have a book of all of our high volatile, high occupancy occupancies for our crews. We like to have a pre-plan. So if there's a fire there, we can get on our iPad and look and say, all right, the fire alarm system's here. This is what the water supply is. This is the fire suppression system, all that stuff, which we haven't updated those in a while because we're behind. So basically, this is just to get us caught back up. And it's to create a succession plan for Chris Everard, because if he walked away today, it'd be very, very tough with our fire safety program. So it's all to kind of carry on what we did, to build it, to grow it, to morph it in what the city needs right now. And it's just the right time to get this back right now.
Thank you, Chief. We have our official chair that has joined us. Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Everything is good. We're almost ready to adjourn.
Sorry. Thank you, Councilmember Panzera.
You can catch your breath.
All's well. We've made it through and actually had sort of an amended conversation here regarding a position that doesn't necessarily appear because it's part of the collective bargaining unit, but Chief was briefing us on a fire position that will come into play. So we were just taking advantage of the opportunity of him being here.
Okay.
And we found out in our preparation for this that it is in the bargaining agreement, but it doesn't have a job description in civil service. So we're working on that right now. So we would put that forward and go through civil service, come up with a job description. But yeah, this is just a very important supportive position. It would take the day-to-day things off of our fire marshal's plate so he can work on higher altitude tasks that are really important to the city. And right now, I think Chris has created a relationship with the building department. He does plan reviews now. He's just really made himself almost invaluable. So when we pull him away from that, we are lacking the day-to-day things that we need in the fire prevention.
We could not work without Chris covering some of our inspections and plan reviews. If he wasn't doing it, we had to hire somebody else to do it.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Can I ask you a question? I didn't hear, how long has it been vacant? You said you lost
I
the deputy. We
think
had a
Captain
deputy.
Hafey walked away in February of '21, I believe.
Okay,
So
like
it's been
4
since then.
Yeah. Okay, about 4 years.
Yeah.
Chris, not to interrupt, but we are effectively through agenda item 3 and ready to begin agenda item 1 and 2.
If I could, just in closing, so I know we talked about 4 positions, just a reminder for council and I guess the viewing public, only 2 of those are really in addition to what we have now. Again, the code enforcement position was already funded in this year's budget, but hadn't been filled. We're not going to fill the planning director position, so it's really a net gain of 2. So we talked about 4, but it's a net gain of 2.
Thank you.
How about did we go over the
Thank you.
crime analyst?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
It's second reading, so there's
Okay.
still opportunity for input and, of
Right.
course, your further review.
Can I go back to the net gain of two? Sorry, just to make sure I'm understanding that correctly, because that's such a high salaried position. Is that why?
Well, so we just talked about 4 positions,
Yeah.
one of which was already filled, the code enforcement position was funded by council
that's
for
right.
this year.
Yeah.
We're just changing the title,
change.
yeah.
No, I'm with you.
And then the planning director
Okay.
not being filled.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Got
welcome.
it.
Yep.
Are there any more questions or concerns regarding this ordinance? Let's see, what's the desire of the committee? Would there be a motion on this
It was
ordinance?
the second reading,
Second, yeah, it is second reading.
so we didn't consider a recommendation in your absence.
Okay. Okay.
If you'd like to make one.
For this salary ordinance, I would move to approve.
Move to recommend.
Would recommend approval, I mean.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, on to the operating budget. Director Miller, would you like to get started with an overview?
Yes. So I always like to begin with what the rules are and how this works every year, just as a refresher. The Ohio Revised Code sets the requirements for our budget. The revised code says appropriations must be less than available cash plus expected receipts. So any budget that I would present to you would be within those rules. The second law is no funds can be spent unless there are appropriations in place. So we need to have appropriations in place on January 1st for us to operate. And only council can approve appropriations. We can't spend any money until you have appropriated it. City's practice is general fund appropriations for operations are less than estimated receipts. So we may have one-time transfers or one-time something come up that could make us have appropriations over estimated receipts, but we don't want to operate that way. We want to operate within the money that we're bringing in each year. We do 5-year projections. I update those constantly, just checking to make sure we're in line with what I expect to see in the next 5 years. We do an operating budget, which is the first thing that we're going to go over, and then we do a capital budget and a 5-year capital plan. So when we're going through with department heads, we're looking at their 5-year capital plan. We even go out to 10 years. It gets a little fuzzy after that, but we are keeping track of that, and we are looking at that and trying to balance capitals as well. So the city has 4 fund types. The general fund, when we talk about the operating budget, generally I'm talking about the general fund. That's almost all the money of the city. Then there are special revenue funds that have specific financial resources that are legally restricted. So gas tax is legally restricted, so it's in its own fund. Debt service fund is where we accumulate resources for the repayment of our debt. And then capital improvement funds, that's where we put money, we've committed money for capital improvements. So we have the general improvement fund, we have the parks improvement fund, we created the new stormwater fund, the water fund, the sanitary sewer fund. So that's where we've kind of accumulated those resources for capital items. This is just a summary of the budget process. It's hard to read, but it's also in the budget book. We begin this in April when we do the tax budget. So each year I have you approve the tax budget in late spring. That's step 1. We send that to the county and we say, we're gonna need property taxes next year. Then we work with the department heads and the mayor on developing the operating and capital budget. That happens in September and October. Then right now, we're in step 3, which is the budget review and public input, where we go over the budget in public and council approves it. And then finally, we have the adoption and implementation in December and January. So we send the approved budget to the county auditor. We put all the information into our accounting system. That's what happens then in the final step. This budget this year, we have appropriations for operations, and then we've discussed before that we're planning to do a capital planning workshop with council. So this budget is only including immediately required capital requests. We asked department heads, what do you need to order on January 1st? We've seen that there's certain equipment in items. You know, we know that we're replacing cruisers and certain rolling stock, and it's best if they know January 1st, because it sometimes can take a long time to get those items in place. And we are seeing a lot of extra maintenance costs from times when we can't get vehicles especially in time. So it does drive up our maintenance costs. The priorities and issues for this budget are infrastructure funding, which we are going to work with council in February and March to review our infrastructure plan and our overall capital plan. Parks master planning is a major priority for 2026. Now, there are no dollars for appropriations included in this budget for the Parks master plan. Adam will talk about that briefly in a minute. This budget is implementing recommendations from Adam's organizational analysis. So the positions we just talked about, those are implemented in this budget. Some issues, property tax reform is an issue. And then ongoing threats to municipal income tax. It's another issue that we have in mind for 2026. Adam, do you want to talk about the infrastructure funding? Planning?
Yeah, sure, thanks, Director Miller. So we're targeting March 7th. We shared that information. Hopefully that works for you to have a 3-hour retreat to discuss capital. And EP Ferris has provided us with a 10-year infrastructure improvement plan, which is a great opportunity. I don't know that we've ever had a 10-year plan to consider. So the goal of that day would be to really, besides the items that Director Miller just addressed that or the need to haves on day one, is really have a strategic conversation around prioritization of projects and programs. We would be armed as staff with information relating to finances and the recommendations of EP Ferris from their professional opinion, what projects they would prioritize, but we would really work with you to develop what you think the priorities should be for the organization from a capital perspective.
And once we have a prioritized capital plan, then I'll work with Brian Cooper at Baker Tilly, and I'm sure he'll come in and talk to you, and we'll look at, okay, how do we fund all of this infrastructure? Do we need to issue bonds? Do we have the money available to do these things? So that'll be kind of the final piece of that infrastructure planning. Then the Parks Master Plan.
So we solicited proposals. We sent an RFP out. It was out for a couple of months on the street, and had a pre-proposal conference with a few firms that appear to be interested. At the end of the day, we received one proposal. So staff is going to take some time this week to consider that proposal and determine next steps, and then potentially make a recommendation to the council committee as well, or their involvement in making the decision as to whether to reissue an RFP or to continue with the one proposal that was received. I would add there's no funding in this plan, in this budget for next year. We're waiting to see what the proposals came in at to help inform that process. So we would come back likely with an appropriation request from you next year to fund the process. But then from there, it would be 12 to 18 months of planning with community involvement and engagement in the process. And I know there's been public interest about the old City Hall. That would be a component of it, that the council and the public would have some opportunity to determine what the use, the best and highest use to that facility and the property would be.
Chris, may I ask a question? Yes. Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. Can anyone brief council and the committee on the use of and availability of and flexibility of the earmarked amount that we retained during the project for new City Hall and the new Parks building, the portion thereof that was maintained in reserve for what I've kind of casually been calling decommissioning the previous building. Is there any update, anything that can be shared, and can it be partially used to supplement the Parks program funding?
I think the general.
Sorry, the plan. The
Yeah.
Parks Department,
There's adequate money in the general fund to pay for the master planning process. We could also use money in Fund 350 is where we had kind of said $1 million before we knew what we were even doing. That's in Fund 350. Currently, there's no appropriation. I think it's just going to be part of the, overall capital planning process.
so it's not identified anywhere as a line item within our current capital
Correct.
budget.
Correct. I mean, we had it in our plan as 1016 Grandview Avenue, $1 million. It's not appropriated anywhere. It hasn't been appropriated, but it has been carried.
Shouldn't we? I'm just, I mean, how are we funding that building being decommissioned, made safe, made, et cetera?
Well, for right now, we're maintaining it as is for storage and operations, so there is no immediate decommissioning effort. And then as we go through the planning process, we can determine if we need to shut down systems and take the demolition with the building. So right now, it's still in use, and so we don't see the need to decommission it. To your point about funding it, though, we were waiting on the proposals to come back from the planning to see what a number could be to bring to you, and we're still evaluating the proposal we received, and we'll come to you with the
It'll come to-
recommendation.
It'll come to them.
Well, you're right. It'll come to council.
My
Yes.
level of concern is
Yes.
just, I'll reiterate what it was during our past 3 years, and that is that I wouldn't want, as a current member of council, for that to be taken lightly, overlooked. It's going to either be an ongoing cost that will only escalate, or it's going to be controlled. So the sooner that can be addressed with some level of decision-making, to me, is a cost savings. So that's my 2 cents in just a few public hours. I won't be a part of that conversation, but I'm here to share it now because it's been a concern of mine since we engaged in these efforts and plannings for several years now. So that's it.
And can I ask, follow-up,
Sure.
what is you said it's still being used?
We still have some use for storage there, and it's it's a stopping point as staff, especially with the service department, if they need to stop on their way into the community for refuse collection and other things. So it's not intense use, but it is still getting some use.
So the heat, electricity,
Yes,
everything's still on?
it's still on. Yes. Yep.
Thanks.
So, with respect to that building, this probably should be covered in the retreat as well with the capital spending.
Not without a plan. So, anyway, there's a gray area there. I get it.
You're asking for the carrying cost for maintaining those systems. Partially.
Effectively.
Yeah, and I
handle
had
on
shared
the
that.
maintenance needs, because
It's about $75,000 to $100,000 annually is what we determined to estimate to keep the building as is for now. But to your point, it feels-
not significant, but to a building that we don't need, it's very significant.
Yes, but it's a chicken or egg, and we feel it could be premature to perform demolition now, and then the public input suggests that there's some use for that building or some renovation to that building, and so that's why we're recommending status quo with the building for now and getting a limited use that we can out of it, which is storage and some meeting space.
And how long do you think, if you had to estimate, would that be?
I think the park's master planning process itself will take 12 to 18 months.
Thank you.
Chris, do we want to wrap up now? It's 6:57, and we can continue next week? Or do you want to go a couple more minutes?
Let's go till about 5 after.
Okay.
And then what I was going to propose, and once we get done, I think that the salary ordinance went a little longer than we thought. So what I proposed, I was going to say, 6 o'clock, December 1st, maybe we could meet at 5:30 to do general and operating and capitals.
I would, you're chairing the next meeting as well. We have all of our department heads here. available for questions tonight. I don't think we need a motion or anything, but it's your decision as to whether or not you want to proceed further into this conversation and then step into the council meeting. Just taking advantage of staff.
Mhm. Well, let's keep going. We'll go about, let's shoot for 7:15.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, but last year, didn't we, I thought we did it 2 weeks in a row where the department heads were at both meetings. One was for the Capitol and one, no, was that not? Okay.
This is
I
the first
remembered.
one.
I don't recall.
I'm saying everybody's here.
We have the opportunity to go on December 8th if we have more, I mean, right?
Yeah, that's potentially we can do that.
Okay.
So the next area is the organizational analyses. We talked about this quite a bit with the salary ordinance. So Adam did an organizational staffing and service gap analysis, and then also an external comparable for wages and an internal equity for wages analysis. So we incorporated the findings from these three to come up with what positions we want to fund in the budget. We've already talked about one of them. The information technology director is going to be filled. It was in the budget for 2025. It continues to be in the budget for 2026. Code enforcement, which we discussed, that was budgeted as a building inspector last year. It will be code enforcement this year. Deputy Public Service Director and Engineering Manager, the crime analyst, and the Assistant Fire Marshal. So those are the positions that are changed or different from the last budget. And then with the external comparable analysis, do you want to discuss it?
Yeah, so it's just, it was a matter of making sure that we were paying according to the market, that our positions that are competitive, and so we want to retain top talent, and when we need to recruit, that we're recruiting with a compensation package that's closest to our Central Ohio peer communities.
And then the internal equity analysis similarly.
Is ensuring that folks that are in the same job title are paid similarly, so that we're, unless there's some difference in past performance or a lengthy tenure could explain a difference, but by and large that folks are being paid similarly for performing similar work.
So property tax reform, we discussed this at the last meeting a little bit. We're hearing that there is a campaign to eliminate property tax, so that is one concern. There's a property tax working group that produced a report. It was appointed by the governor, included several recommendations that are in current bills that are out there. And then there are three bills, House Bill 309, House Bill 335, and House Bill 355. The first two have been passed by the House and the Senate, so they will be going to the governor's desk. These both were expanding the county budget commission's authority. So the county budget commissions then can look at your tax budget that I mentioned earlier, and they'll determine whether entities are building up too much money, and they can reduce your property tax rate based on that. And then House Bill 355 is currently in House committee, and it will increase the voter threshold for property tax levies to 60%. So those are the three that have the greatest impact on the city that we need to keep in mind and monitor. And I included a sheet in here that's been in some of my monthly reports before. It shows you the millage of the city and the revenue we get from property taxes. The bulk of people's property tax bills are school taxes, but for the city of Grandview Heights, we also have a significant portion of our revenue that's property taxes. So we receive $4.8 million a year from property taxes. So it's a very significant source for us. It's a very stable source of revenue for governments. So it's important for us to continue to monitor it and support continuation of property taxes. Municipal income tax is there are always threats out there. It's our largest revenue source. Right now, House Bill 503 is out there, which would require voter approval of municipal tax credit reciprocity changes. This doesn't affect us immediately, but it does take away a tool from council. another thread or decline for the city in revenue. Investment interest rates are going down, so that will cause a decrease in city revenue over the next few years. And there's a proposed increase in the employer share of public pension. We've heard over the last several years, they want to increase the police pension, the city rate from 19.5% to 24%, and that would cost the city an additional $150,000 a year. That has not passed yet, but I did include it in the budget with an assumed passage date of July 1st, just to protect us and make sure the funds are there. So this is a summary of the general fund budget. It's a balanced budget if you exclude the $1 million transfer to capitals. So like I said, we like to keep our operating expenses less than our annual revenue. We have money in the general fund to support capitals, so this budget includes a $1 million transfer to capitals. We could transfer additional dollars after we've done our capital planning and figure out what the priorities are of council. This budget has $23.8 million in appropriations and $23.8 million in revenue, thus a balanced budget. Appropriations increased 9% and estimated revenue increased 8%. This is a pie chart we look at every year. It shows general fund revenue by source. The big orange piece of the pie is income tax, which is 69% of the city's revenue. Property taxes are the next largest at 12% of the general fund revenue. And then we have other smaller categories within there. Charges for services, intergovernmental revenue, that's revenue from the state. And it includes our JEDZ revenue and intergovernmental. So our estimated general fund revenue is $23,817,289. So that's an increase of 7.77%. And most of that is from income tax. We've seen people coming back to work. We've had several businesses move into space in Grandview Yard. So we've had a great year in 2025, and we think that will continue in 2026. Additionally, our JEDZ has had a good year, and we're seeing increases in that revenue line item as well. Income tax collections by source, this is just a reminder. The blue, the big chunk, is from withholding. Most of our income tax comes from businesses withholding from their employees. So these are businesses in Grandview Yard or businesses for residents who are working from home that withhold and pay that way. The orange is business or net profits income tax, and the gray is from individuals. Then this chart just shows the difference between Grandview Yard sources of income tax and non-Grandview Yard. Grandview Yard accounts for approximately 35% of the income tax that the city brings in. Grandview Yard did decrease the most during the pandemic versus the non-Grandview Yard area, so it's a little more balanced now in 2026. At one point, it was 55% of the total income tax for the city, which I think is a good thing. It's showing that all the businesses of the city are performing well. And this is showing the withholding income tax trend. So you can see where we were at a peak in 2020, and then we slowly went down as people started working from home, not in Grandview Heights. The withholdings went down, and we're rebounding in 2026. Looks like it will be a good year. I like to do a reminder that we don't get to keep all the income tax. We're estimating the city will collect $19.8 million, but we do have income tax incentive commitments. We have infrastructure debt commitments at Grandview Yard, and then we also have committed 5% of our income tax to capital projects. So 19.8 is what the gross amount that will come in, but the general fund only keeps $16,381,000. Charges for services are another revenue point for the city. We're continuing to evaluate, the departments evaluate their charges for services. The building department fees were last updated in 2014. I know that Director Halsey's been looking at doing an update on that fee schedule. Special event fees in 2023, we created a fee schedule and standardized that for people coming into the community and having events. Marble Cliff revenue is a significant source for the city. It's $800,000 a year. We entered into a 10-year agreement with them in 2024. Parks and recreation fees, again, we evaluate those every year. EMS fees, we did enter the Medicaid ambulance supplemental payment program, which should allow the city to collect additional dollars for Medicaid for EMS runs. We collect not on residents that are here, but we collect from insurance companies on runs that we might make in Columbus or surrounding areas. General fund expense by category. The numbers change, but the percentages stay about the same year over year. 74% of our budget is salary and related. So the discussions we had about the salary ordinance are quite pertinent because that's the biggest driver of most of our budgeted dollars. And then general fund expense by department. Again, these percentages don't usually change much year over year. Police and fire are a significant part of our budget, and they represent over half of our employees. The salary and wages line item, health insurance, it increased by 1.3 million. Health insurance increased by 8%, which is what we're seeing as the industry standard right now. So I think that's great. We didn't have any increases the past 2 years. We work through the Franklin County Cooperative, so we use Franklin County's bargaining power to get our health insurance. We have amazing coverage, and they really help control the costs for the city because it's a much larger group. Pay increases of 3.75% were budgeted for most of the employees, and that's based on wage increases that the unionized employees get. There's a note here that the Director of Planning and Community Development was not budgeted for 2026, and then we had the new positions that we've already discussed in depth. We also added some part-time service maintenance workers at 1.5 FTE, so those are part-time employees that will come in and help, especially during times where when you have lots of employees picking up trash, if you have several off, it makes a big difference. So if we're going to try to get some part-time help in there to alleviate some of the pressure that can be on the service department, especially during times of high vacation or if there are injuries. And then we're also adding 1.4 FTEs for facility maintenance. We've created the facility maintenance manager. We have a technician now, and they're going to all the buildings, and especially with our new building, there's a lot of work, a lot of systems that need to be maintained. So this will add some part-time hours to assist that group. This slide talks a little bit about how the wages were increased. Again, there's 9 department head positions. They were increased by 3.75. There's currently 1 vacancy, the IT director, which is budgeted to be filled, and then we didn't budget for the Director of Planning and Community Development. And then for the non-union employees, most received a 3.75% increase. 7 were adjusted based on the external comparable analysis. 2 were adjusted based on the internal comparable analysis. And then we had 3 adjusted for performance. There's 1 vacancy and then 2 new positions for the non-union. Contractual services increased by $262,000 or 12%, and I kind of list some of the areas and reasons for these increases. We have additional janitorial costs because of the new building. Commercial insurance is going up because our property values are going up. And then we also budgeted for some increase just for in general for inflation and cost of claims. We also saw increases in for the police cruiser camera and body cameras. We're seeing that we need a new system, and instead of being able to pay cash or buy a system like that, everybody wants to enter into like a 5-year agreement. So it's a maintenance and warranty type agreement, but it's creating ongoing operating costs instead of one large capital cost that we may have had in the past. We're moving to systems more like this. Planning and zoning support, we have some additional dollars in for that, and then economic development as well. We've been using a contractor to assist us with some of the businesses that are looking to come in and doing our incentive agreements. I put a summary of legal. In the past, we've looked at this. We're not anticipating any increase in the legal budget. We're only billed as we call them, so it varies from year to year, but we've remained very stable. General operations increased by $352,000. This is building maintenance and all of our utilities. It's most of the just day-to-day stuff, custodial supplies, that type of thing. And then non-operating decreased by $78,500. A big part of this is income tax refunds. They were particularly high. I have a little chart here that shows they were very high post-pandemic. So people were working from home, their employers withheld from the wrong place, so then they asked for refunds. So we saw a very high income tax refunds, and that's coming down, and that caused a reduction in our budget. And then finally, transfers. We transferred $1 million to cover our debt service commitments. We transfer $175,000 to cover our accrued leave. So when somebody retires, we pay it out of this separate fund, and it doesn't spike certain payroll accounts for this one-time thing. And then finally, we did a $1 million transfer to support the capital projects. The general fund reserve, I'm proposing a $7.3 million reserve for 2026. This represents about 28% of expenditures or 105 days of cash. During the pandemic, when our income taxes were going down, we used the higher of 28% of expenditures or 35% of revenue, but we're in a good spot now, so this represents 28% of expenditures. Do we want to stop there, Chris, and pick up?
Director Miller, it's just about 7:15, so maybe if we can open up, if there's any specific questions or concerns members would have with department heads, we can have for just a few minutes and
Yeah.
then adjourn. Okay. So I'll open up for anyone.
We covered a lot. I'm satisfied with tonight's
Nothing
progress.
else?
And
Okay.
information that's been shared for the agenda item.
Okay, in particular with the committee members, again, the salary ordinance, the first one that was covered, went a little longer. Would everybody be able to meet at 5:30 rather than 6 on December 1st? I guess I'm one to talk.
Can I look at my calendar? So the idea is we're gonna go for an hour and a half leading up to council, so we have less on December 8th to work through.
Correct.
Point of order, that'd be December 1st.
There's no meeting on December 8th.
Be December 1st.
I mean,
No,
we're
December
shooting for
1st.
getting it all
December
done on
8th.
December 1st.
Right, we have a regular council meeting
There's
on
a
December
council meeting.
8th if we need it. It's on the,
We moved
we
it
have
to
a
the
whole other
1st.
calendar.
First.
The 1st is the regular meeting. We moved
I thought
it
we
from
had the
8th.
1st and the 8th on the calendar.
We have both on the calendar.
Both are, I'm looking at my calendar right now.
The 8th was supposed to be the regular meeting, and then we.
It moved up
We
to the
moved,
1st.
we moved the other one that would have been the second meeting in the month to the 1st. I mean, I'm sure we could check the minutes. I
We
know.
don't have to have the 8th, it's
Right,
a
right.
mid-month.
Yeah, it's a mid-month.
I'm just saying that it's held for us. I'm okay to go at 5:30, I checked my
Okay.
calendar.
I am too.
Okay,
That would be December 1st, 5:30.
yeah. Okay, if nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn.